Welcome to this second video in our series looking at strategy execution and how you can build a world-class execution system. The second video follows on from the first one we looked at, basically why do organizations struggle to execute. This second video is going to focus on really what are the secrets that help the very best out execute the rest. So before we get started, let's just have a little think about this. I'm sure many of you can think of organizations that have been really successful, typically the likes of Apple and others in the short period. But does anybody in the other end know any organizations that have been successful over the last 30 years? I'd like to venture one of the most successful organizations is a company called Danaher Corporation. And just to give you a broader illustration of that success, if I plot, let's say we're going from 1995 here to 2015, if I plotted the S&P index in terms of percentage return, and I looked at companies that were successful in 1995, or existing in 1995, and look at the overall S&P index, obviously there was a kind of bit of a dip around the time of the financial crisis, but effectively they've risen to around about 300%. If I was to plot Danaher's curve on that time, it would look a bit more like something like this, where perhaps that's 2,000% return. Simply put, Danaher Corporation, which is one of the least well-known $19 billion conglomerates, is probably the most successful company in terms of return to shareholders in the world. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, why are they outperforming so significantly the rest of the S&P index? And the reality is that there's something they have in common with some of the other high-performance companies. At the heart of their success is a business system. And that business system, we'll talk a little bit more about that business system in a second, but that business system gives them the ability to effectively, continually acquire, integrate, and make those acquisitions highly successful in terms of execution. But what's also very interesting is if we look over, if that's the Danaher stock over that same period, there's been a couple of other organizations that are very notable in the last 10 years. If I said something a bit more like this, which have got similar types of exceedingly effective returns, and if I draw something similar to this, which have both significantly outperformed the index, and those are two organizations called Belden and IDEX. I picked them out because they've also seen significant outperformance of the market. And the question is, well, what's similar to those? Well, only to make the small point that at roughly this point, and respectively for effectively two key people, essentially John Stroop and Lawrence Kingsley, who are respectively the CEOs of Belden and IDEX, those two CEOs were effectively appointed, and they share one common factor. They've implemented a business system, but they're also ex-Danaher alumni in that they were running Danaher companies before they joined those companies. And they've been able to take what's happening with Danaher and apply that within those organizations, and they're seeing similar success. So what is this mythical business system and this opportunity that I believe every organization has to take advantage of this thinking? Well, if we think a little bit about the difference, I would characterize the difference as over here we have the concept of a production system, as typified by the likes of, for example, Toyota. Can't spell Toyota. So Toyota as an organization have effectively, as everybody knows, have been incredibly successful in building essentially an incredibly lean organization and establishing a culture that drives the concept of lean and daily management, the idea of having a philosophy, a long-term philosophy that's allowing them to ensure that their employees are owning and improving their system all the time. They have a great respect for people, and they've also recognized and defined the role of leadership in supporting the operating system. That system, as we know, has led to a huge level of adoption of lean across the world, and has led to highly successful operations. The difference, if you like, between, if you think about the concept of a business system does contain and integrate that lean concept, but it also includes a number of other elements. And if I, for example, was to change the axis here, and the axis, let's say, was in terms of the impact of the system, and effectively the breadth of application, a business system concept which embraces the lean side but builds on top of that effectively the concept of growth and innovation and a set of tools to support that, as well as effectively a focus on leadership, and in particular the concept of strategy deployment, or Hoshin Kanri as it's often known, which is really about creating a long-term planning process that involves and integrates a plan, do, check, act thinking into long-range planning. And this kind of system, example, basically typified by Danaher, is what's behind the most successful companies. And to give you an idea of its impact, organizations that have built a system that combines this concept of growth, focus and leadership tool sets, those organizations, if you took a cohort study, have by far today are outperforming the rest of their respective competitors. And one thing that's very clear, because for a number of years, effectively, people like Lawrence Colt, the CEO at the time of Danaher, and even his successor Thomas Joyce, they are reluctant to share the internal details of the Danaher business system because it provides so much benefit. But what we've seen recently is a much greater level of understanding has become, techniques like Hoshin planning have become much more widely understood. And I now believe, and certainly this video series will help you understand how you can take these concepts that are allowing this fantastic performance and build them in to creating the basis of the business system within your own organization. And that will be the subject of the next video. Thank you very much.